Hello, wood floor. Mr. Mark from the Foundry here. Today I'm going to talk to you about how we can use wedges, which are just inclined planes, to make work easier. We're going to be using a few tools today. We'll be using the hammer, a piece of scrap wood, a nail, and a rivet. But before we use any tools in the Foundry, I always have to do a couple of things, like use our safety equipment. So I'll be putting on my apron and putting on my goggles before we do anything else. Now that I've got my apron and my glasses on, we're ready to move forward. Let's take a closer look at these two objects. This is the nail and this is the rivet. Surely by now you've had a chance to look at these items and think more about them, about the differences and similarities. And we're going to be doing a little experiment with them to see how they work when work is applied to them. And we'll use a hammer and try to drive these into a piece of wood, and we'll see what happens. But first, I want you to think about which one will go into the wood, how much, and why. Think about that, talk about it with your partner, and then we'll move on to the next step. Alright, so I've got the nail here and a piece of scrap wood, and I'm going to drive the nail into the piece of scrap wood. Taking the nail in my hand, I'm going to hold it in place and lightly tap a few times just to get the nail so that my fingers can be free and safe. Now that the nail is in place, I'm going to use the hammer and I'm going to tap into the nail, driving it into the wood. Alright, there it went in a little bit. I'm going to take my ruler and see exactly how far it went in. Using the ruler, lining it up carefully, I can see that it is showing about 30 millimeters left. Okay? So depending on how long the nail was when I started, we can measure and see how far it went in. But right now, there are 30 millimeters still showing from the nail. So what happened when I drove the nail into the wood? And do you think that any work was done while I hammered the nail into the wood? If you said the nail went into the wood and that work was done because force was applied, then you were right. So now that you've seen what happens with the nail, next we're going to try with the rivet. Okay? So I want you to think about what happened with the nail and then make a prediction about what you think is going to happen with the rivet. And I'll give you a minute to think about that with a partner or a neighbor. Alright, so with the rivet, I'm going to apply the same force with the hammer into the piece of wood. I'm going to use the same force that I used to tap the nail in. Let's see what happens. Let's take a closer look. Like it didn't even go in at all. Wonder why. So what happened when I tried to drive the rivet into the wood? And my next question is, was work done when I tried to drive the rivet into the wood? Answer those questions and I'll come back and tell you more. If you said that the rivet didn't go through the wood and work was not applied, then you're right. Because the rivet didn't go through the wood, work was not done. And even though I applied force to it, it didn't go through the wood, so no work was really done. Good job. So when thinking about this activity with the nail and the rivet, which one do you think was more difficult to drive into the wood? Think about that and ask a partner. If you said the rivet was more difficult to drive into the wood, then you were right. Good job. Now let's think about the nail one more time. When I put the nail into the wood and I used force against it with the hammer, what was the very tip of the nail doing to the wood? What impact was it causing on the wood? Think about that and also talk to a partner. If you said that the nail, the very tip of the nail, is a wedge, then you're right. Can you think of other wedges that are used in the Foundry? There are lots of tools that we use that might be used like a nail or like a wedge. Think about that and talk to your partners about it. You guys have fun. I want to keep trying to get this rivet into this piece of wood. Surely If I apply enough force, eventually it'll go in. Still nothing. I give up.